Very well, Colin. Good to see you again.
Well, good. Yes, you too. Well, last week we had a session around security guarding and the guarding model itself. This has been around a few while. I think you did your first research on this, what, maybe a few years ago? A long time ago, you've been studying security guards. I suppose over the last 5 years, we've seen the sort of perhaps the need for security guards grow as the external environments become a bit more challenging. We've also seen a rise in the cost of security guards, with the wages also going up, which is putting a real strain on retailers' budgets, and really forcing them to think through different ways, better ways to prove the return on investment. And help their board at least feel more comfortable that this is the best way to spend what could be hundreds of millions of dollars or euros for a particular retailer. So we had three different presentations, and then we had quite a bit of discussion. So I wonder what you sort of took away as some of the sort of key highlights, if you like, or learnings that retailers might want to think about as they look to innovate their own guarding model.
Yes, it is one of those classic perennial issues, isn't it, that we talk about the role of guards within retail environments. And as you say, it's probably one of the biggest recurrent costs that major retailers have, I think, in terms of their security budget, isn't it? We're talking significant numbers.
Yeah.
And so we often have the conversation about, given how much it costs, what is the value and what is the purpose of such a significant investment. And so it's always interesting to hear from different retailers on how they're addressing this issue. And in this session, we had three really quite different approaches in some respects. We had one which was, the age-old debate that they were going through yet again, whether they should be employed directly by the retailer, become,
Yeah.
retail employees, or you use third party. And as we know from previous sessions, there are pluses and minuses on both sides of that equation, and they were working through some of this. It was interesting to hear how one of their concerns when you have in-house is how do you control the way that those people are used in stores? Do they get, as it were, hijacked by the store manager to do things
Yes.
beyond the remit of a security guard? So, well, while you're here, do you want to stack some shelves? Um, and also issues about intimidation as well, which was quite interesting, about how if you're employing somebody local, whether they can become intimidated by local crime groups who know who they are and know where they live, and whether that compromises their capability to deliver effective security. So there are lots of issues around the in-house versus contract, and I don't think we really came to a conclusion as to which one is best. I think it comes down to what's right for your organization at that time, I think, and what you want them to do.
Yeah. I mean, the retailer that spelled it out did a really good job of spelling out the whole issue and the
Mhm.
opportunity. And I think for them, the challenge was they operated big stores and small stores. And that sort of challenge of the different formats, I think, is also puts an extra pressure on the different, or gives an extra flavor or lens to think about the internal versus third party
Yeah. Yeah.
when you've got those different formats.
Yes, and then the other retailer, was very open, and it's great to, when retailers are so frank about sharing information. They'd run a project on trying to understand, what value that the guarding budget was bringing, and they ran a really nice experiment in that respect, where they
Yeah,
they they
very true.
provided additional guarding hours in, I think, as many as 50 stores. I think it was, to try out, what happens if we double the amount of hours that we have around guarding. And then in the other stores, they said, well, what happens if we just use the same budget, but we increase labor, the number of labor hours in those stores, but not guarding? So really interesting, compare and contrast between the two. And they measured it in terms of, obviously, the amount of loss that they experienced, through their stock adjustments, but also in terms of impact on sales as well, which is always often a very forgotten indicator that I think is terribly important in retailing.
Yeah.
And it was really quite striking, wasn't it, that they found that the bringing in spending the money on more guarding generated high levels of sales and lower levels of loss than if they just put it purely into store labor hours. So that was really quite an interesting and revealing finding. And we
Yeah.
spent some time, didn't we, sort of trying to unpick that, to understand why. having extra guards would have an impact on sales, for instance. And we came to the view that what it meant was that it gave the existing store staff more time to restock the shelves, to make sure that there wasn't out of stocks, and that customers were getting, better service in that respect, and therefore had this sort of knock-on effect, a consequential effect of the guards doing, the role of security and then taking it off the shoulders of the store teams.
Yeah, who knew security guards grow sales? You
Yes.
think prices, bigger range, no, security guards grow
Yes.
sales.
And and it's important.
Curious.
And they were very open in saying it didn't happen in all the stores.
Yes.
In some stores it had no impact at all. And I think what they're now doing is trying to understand why some stores it has an impact and in other stores it doesn't. And that's always the case, isn't it? That there'll be local circumstances and other factors that need to be taken into play when rolling out these sorts of initiatives. And it may not be, certainly not a one size fits all, that's for sure, that really came out of that. But it was good to see them experimenting with different ways of using this budget.
Well, I think it's interesting because often you speak to store managers, and this was a convenience store retailer, and you say to them, "What do you want to help your business grow?" and all, and they often say, "Well, more hours rather than security guards." And so this, I think, was really helpful for that particular business to have that conversation with the managers because it
Yeah,
proved pretty solidly that the security guards covered the cost of the security guards themselves. It
certainly. Yeah,
wasn't
in some of the stores. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't so obvious in any of the stores that the more store hours led to, huge a big enough increase in sales and reduction in loss to cover the costs.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
that was great. That was a really one. And then the third one, a fascinating case study from America, of where one retailer, is really taking quite a radically different approach to thinking about how they use this resource of guarding, and it was an example of where they decided to really try and use it as a mechanism to connect more closely with their local community by first of all reaching out and employing people directly from the local communities around the stores to recruit their security staff from that community, but then also thinking through how that person can then really engage with that local community rather than just being seen as a reactive security person, but much more as almost like a reach out local social worker, to work with local groups to understand why they were coming into the store to steal, how they can maybe potentially divert some of these people into different, to getting help and support in different parts of communities. So a really radically different approach to understanding how you can think about securing your stores, but by really bringing the local community, as it were, into the store and connecting it with local people and using local people to try and deliver this resource. And fascinating case study. How easy that is to replicate in other places, I think, was a big challenge for everybody who was listening. But clearly, this retailer had invested very heavily in this, and for them, it seemed to be delivering some really quite good results.
yeah, no, I think we've every store, clearly has a community. Most places we go around the world, and they have a community outreach program per store. But I've not seen it used in such a way that we saw it being used in. And it's the contrast between these stores before they used to have armed police
Mm,
officers in the
yeah,
stores as their security guards, in uniform, and whilst these community guards pushed for peace, I think they were called,
yeah,
they had a kind of a uniform. They certainly didn't have guns, which
no.
we wouldn't expect in the UK, but it just shows the difference in approach, and I think it's clearly paying out quite a few dividends for them. They were, the team presenting were very proud of the results, and rightly so.
Yes, then they were. Yeah, as you say, very very proud of it, and that what came across, I think, was a huge amount of energy had gone into that, and resource and commitment from the retailer as well. Actually, they were providing additional resources to those local communities to support
Yeah,
these staff. So it was impressive, to see a company really make a commitment to trying something different,
yeah.
and feeling like it was making a positive change for the store and the local community. So it was great to hear that, and I think a lot
At
of the
some
retailers
scale.
benefited.
At some scale as well.
Yes, yes, I think
It's not just like a trial of 10 stores, or whatever. There are 160, 170 of these
Yes.
peace officers. So I thought that was highly impressive. Well, we're going to try and do this event, or this anniversary, if you like, this topic next year as well, to see what further innovations are coming along. But thank you so much for taking the time to share your notes, and we'll see you next time.
All right, Colin, take care, mate. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.